Put that coffee down.
I'm not here to waste your time, okay? I certainly hope you're not here to waste mine. So I'm gonna keep this short.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Coffee's for closers only.
Well, hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Behind Your Back podcast with me, Bradley Hartman. This podcast talks about leadership, personal productivity, time management, and the craft of selling in the construction industry. So over the past couple hundred episodes or so, we've been lucky to have a few folks who come on the show, and you can instantly tell they have put a ton of work and planning into the episode. So when we flip the mics on, that they're able to share insights and some very specific things that they want to share with the audience to help you improve. And this is certainly one of those conversations. I'm excited to share my conversation with Mr. Justin Powell, Vice President of Sales at Beacon Roofing Supply Incorporated. But first, let's recognize our sponsors. I'd like to thank Boise Cascade Engineered Wood Products. They help you move faster and build stronger. They make it easier to get more done. And our friends at Materials Exchange. They're the LBM Industries answer to E-Trade. Materials Exchange is your digital marketplace for lumber and panels. So back to Mr. Justin Powell. He is from the great state of Florida. He attended Florida State University, the Seminoles, and then he picked up his MBA at University of North Florida. His first job out of school was with Stock BMC. He learned a lot there before transitioning into a sales engineering role at Comtech. Then Justin joined Owens Corning in multiple roles in Atlanta and Dallas-Fort Worth before moving on to Beacon Roofing Supply Incorporated. In this episode, in somewhat a unique way compared to the last couple hundred episodes that we've done, we have used Justin's career trajectory to share insights along the way and things that he has learned, and what he shares will be valuable for you whether you've been in this business for 20 days, 2 years, or 20 years, because the things that we talk about, everything from leveraging mentor relationships, pre-call planning, he has a wonderful piece of advice that he learned from the CEO at Owens Corning that he shares on the 4 big choices you have in life to which to excel that I wrote down and I'm still thinking about. We talk about the lone wolf sales rep and virtual selling and much, much more. But we use his career trajectory as kind of the backbone of this episode to share insights and tips and things that he has learned along the way. You, my friends, are in for a treat. Thank you as always for listening. Please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Justin Powell, Vice President of Sales at Beacon Roofing Supply. So Mr. Justin Powell, welcome to the show.
Bradley, thanks for having me, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you making time. I know you are extremely busy and these are some unprecedented, interesting times. So it means a lot to me that you carved out a few minutes to talk shop. We're going to start off like we always do with our first 4 to learn a little bit about you and your background. So the first question here is, do you remember the first music album you either purchased or received?
Yeah, so I purchased them together. So I've got 2, if that's cool.
Yes.
And one is the Police Greatest Hits, and the other one is a Snoop Dogg album that I will not say the title of. But yeah, the Police and Snoop Dogg, the first 2 albums that I purchased on my own.
Well, if I'm judging your age in the right vicinity, I think I know what Snoop Dogg album that would be. And I believe both of those are classics in their own right.
They are. They're both amazing, a lot of fun. One of them you could say the title of, the other one you can't.
I do believe we're a couple hundred episodes in. This might be the first one where someone said, this is the artist. This is the album I cannot name, but that's great. What about the first concert? Now you got me really curious here.
Yep. First concert was Green Day. I also cannot name the name of that album or the name of the concert tour, but Green Day on their first tour at UNF Auditorium, very small venue, but it was really fun.
Got it. And remind me, what town is University of North Florida in?
Jacksonville. So I grew up in Neptune Beach.
Oh, okay.
Right outside of Jacksonville.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm going to warn you now. If this next question is, what was your first job? And if you tell me that I can tell you how much I made, but I can't tell you the name of the job, I'm like, you know what? There's There's a theme that's running through here. What was your first job?
My first job, I was a beach lifeguard at age 15. I did that for 9 years and moved up to lieutenant. So beach lifeguard, saving lives.
Saving lives, soaking up the rays. I think back to the jobs I had in high school, and I was like, what was I doing? I was working at the lumberyard at 14. You were on the beach, saving lives, helping people, bad career choices.
It was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. But it definitely built some foundational character for me, which was exciting.
Sure. And your first vehicle?
First vehicle, Volvo 740. Super safe, kind of cool, but red Volvo 740.
What's a 740?
740. So you have the 240, which was the super boxy.
Yes.
The next level up was a 740, which was not quite as boxy. So that's why I said sort of cool, but very safe. Very safe.
The Volvo of my youth was characterized by basically 3 rectangles, 2 on the end and 1 in the middle, all kind of smashed together. Super safe, but very kind of iconic, actually.
That was my brother's first car, was the 240. So he had the 240, which was my mom's hand-me-down, and I got the 740, which was the exact same thing.
Got it. And what was the age difference between you and your brother?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. All right.
So Volvo progressed substantially in that 3-year period between when my mom had those cars.
Yeah. Everyone was really impressed with the aerodynamics improvements of Volvo over that time. Well,
it had a crank sunroof, though. That's what I remember. I had to crank that bad boy, but man, I had a sunroof, so watch out.
That instantly takes me back. I forgot you had the crank. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a nice little detail. Dude, I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past, year and change. And I'm like looking at your kind of career progression. You started at BMC, then you transition into, I will assume, I could be wrong, you can fill us in here a little bit later, where you got much more sales specific as an engineer into more details. Then you go to Owens Corning and then Beacon. If you'd be willing to, I'd be kind of fascinated to know, because you're hitting some different roles with some different responsibilities through your career, but also some geographic locations. So I thought maybe we could kind of use that as the spine of this episode here, and maybe just start with, how'd you get involved with BMC? And maybe as you start as an outside sales rep and then get into sales manager, what did you learn during that period when you were based in Orlando area for that?
Correct. So it kind of take a little bit of a step back. So I was sort of born into our industry. So while the first job was beach lifeguard, my dad was a police officer, but he also built about 20 custom homes. So I grew up on job sites.
Wow.
So when I was wrapping up my MBA, everybody else in my class, when one of the final classes, they sort of raise your hand, what are you getting into? Everybody else in the room was management. I literally was the only person who was going into sales in that entire group. But I went to a job fair at Florida State, not at UNF, but at Florida State, and met Stock Building Supply, BMC there.
Right.
And with my wanting to get into sales and my construction background, just with my dad being in the business, it was a no-brainer for me. And so that's what took me to Stock BMC down in Florida. And so when you think of what you sort of mentioned as lessons learned as I went through my career, the best thing that did for me and the best thing I did was choose a company that had a really good sales training and development program.
Right.
And so I think as I would recommend, first off, I'd recommend our industry to anybody. You got to get into building materials. It's phenomenal. We have so much fun. It's just a really great place to grow your career. Mm-hmm. But then secondly, when you do that, make sure to pick a company that has that amazing development program where they will invest in you. So the really interesting thing was I started in distribution at a branch in Orlando, and I got to do every job in the branch. I got to build lumber packages. I got to build windows. I got to build doors. I got to ride in the trucks. They never let me drive the truck. I don't know why, but I got to ride and do deliveries. Got to work behind the counter, did inside sales, did HR a little bit. I did everything in that branch to completely learn the business, and that was priceless for me. And so when I think about folks, even if they're not getting into building materials, but that first job out of college, if you can be patient, find a company with that development program and just follow the process, it's paid off dividends for me in the long run.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, because I feel like in my career, I was very lucky, came out of school, heard about Pulte, got hired there, and I lucked into the fact that they put a ton of time, effort, and energy and expense into training folks. And it wasn't until literally till I left, started getting more and more clients and had this instant realization like, oh, this is not what everybody does. Did you know when you were getting recruited or learning about stock BMC, was that part of their pitch? Did you know that? Or was it like me, was it kind of a happy surprise that you're going to get a ton of training and a lot of exposure to different parts of the business?
So they did communicate that in the recruitment process. So Melinda Harris, still remember her. She's amazing. She was the HR partner that recruited me into stock BMC. But she did talk about it. But for me, I didn't connect it at the time. I just thought I wanted to do building material sales. That was exciting for me. So I got lucky. Really, I did. But Melinda did a great job communicating. But yeah, I think really knowing the questions to ask now with these types of resources like your podcast out there, young folks or people looking to make those career changes to get into our industry, look for those things because they're really important.
Yeah. And couldn't agree more. And I think I remember when I was coming out, money was the biggest thing. And then you hear everyone say like, dude, don't worry about the money here because you shouldn't be anywhere close to your maximum earning years. And Hartman, if you are when you're 22, you got to have a different set of issues. Where are you going to get exposure to see what works, where your skill set is best applied, and like where your highest ceiling might be. So couldn't agree more to that. So tell me about this transition, because it was really interesting to listen to you kind of talk about the insights and what you learned going to a quote unquote sales engineer, which walk me through that. What is a sales engineer?
Yeah. So sales engineer. So I transitioned from distribution lumber yards into more like site development, construction products with Contech. And that role of sales engineer really just changed the way that I sold. So a couple things, once again, that Contech provided, they had an amazing training program. Okay. So right back to find companies that have that. So my biggest lesson that I learned from Contech was in week one, which is a bit surprising. But I always thought I had presentation game, Bradley. I thought I was, at that point in my life, I'd done presentations in school. I thought I had this thing, man. Like I was really, really good. Week one, Contech shipped me up to their corporate office. And the vast majority of their business is specification with architects and engineers. Okay. And so you have to be able to do brown bag lunch and learns in that space. So the vast majority of our first week was presentation training. You're videoed the whole week, and half the week is watching yourself on video. And man, I tell you what, I was terrible. Well, I came into that thinking I was amazing. And watching myself on video those first couple of times, I was very disappointing, but they had an amazing sales presentation training process. And by the time I got through that first week, my presentation skills had improved exponentially. So that right there really changed my career, because what it allowed me to do is go into these architects and engineers and be the resource for them, be the expert for them, and get our product specified on these plans. And if we were specified, we would get the project 40 to 60% of the time. And that really helped me change the way that I sold.
Well, I can only imagine that audience. And I have honestly not had a whole lot of experience pitching directly to them, but have worked closely alongside them. You get a group of architects or engineers or both of them in the room together, dude, that's a very intense lunch and learn if they're coming in just locked in, not a whole lot of engagement. So I imagine that's totally different audience from, the builders and the subs and the guys who are out in the job, generally in demeanor and often attitude. That's a different audience for you.
Amen. And so you have to be, I guess, two funny things that go with that, a serious and then a funny. You have to be the subject matter expert. You have to know your product, your design, everything about it. Because if you walk in and try to BS an architect or a structural or a bridge engineer, right, they're going to literally throw you out of the building. So being that technical subject matter expert really is necessary in that process. But the cool thing was at that company, I had a engineering support team. So I would go into these bridge engineers and help them design the bridge and start doing small talk with the engineer. And they'd be like, hey, I went to Georgia Tech and I'm an engineer. And I'd be like, yeah, I went to Florida State and I'm not. And they would like freeze and be like, what do you mean you're not? I'm like, hey, don't worry, man. I got engineers at a 1-800 number that we're going to dial right now to help us walk through this process. But that look on their face when they were like, "What do you mean you're not an engineer? What do you do?" I said, "Hey,
Right.
I'm a business and hospitality major, but I can still help you."
Yes. Well, and I think two things that jump out is number one, saying, hey, being upfront with what could be perceived as a weakness, but also being aware and candid and also having a sense of humor of like trying to bring in, even if they're like, I never went to one Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets game. You're like, doesn't matter. At least you're going to poke them a little bit to get them out of their comfort zone. I like that.
Agreed. And then being able to connect the dots and connect them to the resources that was my role. So I think that was the exciting part, to be able to help people like that, even though I wasn't necessarily trained or educated to do that. So that was an interesting part of that job.
Yeah. And the other thing that comes to mind there is just this idea of team selling. Even when you say, well, we don't really do team selling, I say, I understand the models and what that means. However, if you're not looking at all the talent around you, and that could be adjacent in your company, below you, people that you report to, if you're not using them as resources to help you sell and thinking that you're the lone wolf, you might be missing out on opportunities. And I think for folks like you that have gone through the true team selling, you're pulling in experts from different areas, but also driving that sales process, you learn pretty quickly on how to leverage those individuals for their maximum benefit.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I've studied the concept of the lone wolf sales rep. And the lone wolf sales rep is typically not the person a company comes to get promoted to a sales manager or a sales leader. So when you think of the concept of team selling, yes, no matter who you are, even if you are the superstar sales rep, there is a team behind you. And so working well with that group, leveraging that group, that's one of the big skills that at Contech in that sales engineer role that I developed, because in that role, if I wasn't a team player, I never would have been successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition. So this is when you make your first move out of state. Now, not that far, but still that's a jump. So you move up to Atlanta, start working for OC, Owens Corning?
Correct.
Go into that. What led to that? And maybe bring to me, since I'm sitting in Dallas here, of course, I'm interested. And actually, we didn't go into too far details on how you ended up in Dallas-Fort Worth. But before there, tell me about that shift. So you moved out of state. How was that process for you? And how did you know the time was right to kind of leave your home state of Florida?
Yeah. So I think ultimately, I've always thought about being flexible and open to new opportunities. Okay. And so I think when you look at my career path, my openness to move geographically has really, every time I've done it, it's opened up amazing opportunities for me. So I'm not saying that is for everybody. You got to make sure that your significant other, whatever support system you have, has got to be open to it as well. But the move from Orlando to Atlanta for my wife and me was a super easy one. The opportunity there was great. So then as I was transitioning from Contech to Owens Corning is just an amazing company. Yeah. Obviously, it's well known in our industry. Right. So it was a really fun opportunity for me to go work in more of a high scale Fortune 500 type setting, which I was looking forward to that as well. So when you think of lessons learned again, with Owens Corning, I think one of the big things that I learned in that role was getting away from that transactional selling approach and becoming more of a partner with my customers that I had and helping them make more money. If I helped my customer make more money and help them grow by knowing how to understand their business, knowing how to train them, knowing how to help them sell better to their customers, then I won as well. And it was pretty easy after that. As soon as you start helping your customer make more money, the price discussion moves over to the side, and it's just, hey, how do I get more of this from you? So I think for me personally, in that area sales manager role in Atlanta, that was my biggest lesson learned. I think number two is when you work for a big sophisticated company like that, they come to you with special project opportunities. Yeah. And sometimes when they come to you, you might think, well, I'm busy. I don't know if I have time for this special project, but they're coming to you for a reason. They're coming to you because they think you can help in that role. So one of the things I learned at that point in my career was to say yes. When somebody in your company comes with a special opportunity to help test a new product or be on a new committee that's evaluating a new piece of technology, say yes. You're going to think that you're busy. You're going to think you don't know how you're going to fit it in. But when you do, it starts to open up doors that wouldn't be there if you say no or say, hey, I really don't have time for that.
Yeah, I heard a piece of advice from kind of the McKinsey alum, a guy named Tom Peters, who's funny and super smart. But he said, when these special projects come along, number one, always say yes. And number two, the crappier it is, the faster you should say yes to it. The expectations are lower and you are guaranteed to learn something and you're going to get on someone's radar. At least you put forth the effort. I wonder if I could jump back just to your previous one where you said you made that transition from more of a transactional approach to, it sounds like, just put helping your client first. And sometimes that might be putting a lot of effort and energy and attention and sometimes your own capital in the service of your customer or prospect with no guarantee of return. I think for any successful salesperson, they realize that. And yet, for sometimes folks who are still in that transactional mindset, it's tough for them. Two-part question here. I don't want to have a leading question, but is it part of human nature? Is it part of just being mature? Why do you think younger folks often struggle with that? Forget about the money. The money will be there if you do this stuff first, but sometimes that seems slow to click in for folks.
Yeah, so I don't even think it's younger folks. I think all sales folks struggle with this one thing, and that's giving themselves enough credit for the value that they provide to their customers. And so I think one of the things about our industry is it's traditionally been very relationship based and it's been very transactional. Yep. And so I think when a sales rep sees their competition and other people in even their own company acting more transactional, right? Worried about price, just worried about the next order or the next delivery, they tend to think that's the way that you should act. And they don't give themselves enough credit of, hey, what am I actually providing and what can I provide for this customer?
Yeah.
So sometimes just taking a step back and thinking about, hey, what do I provide? What does my company provide? And what does this customer need? Like, what is their need? There's got to be something beyond a low price. There's got to be something beyond that delivery next Tuesday that the customer needs. And just taking a moment to breathe and broaching that subject with the customer really, really helps set those sales reps apart. And once again, it's not just the young ones that struggle with that. I deal with many folks today that struggle with that are 20 plus year veterans in our industry.
You just said something that kind of blew my mind. This idea, and I often think this way, literally until you just said it, is I often think like if you have a line and there's on two ends, on one end is relational and the other one is transactional. And I couldn't agree more with you is that we see this all the time is that it's not an either or. We often see them together, that they are based purely on relationships and strong relationships over time. And yet they act very transactional at the same time. I couldn't agree more with that. And I said, why do we have to match this guy's price? And he's like, well, he's a good customer. I said, not he's a good customer. He's the best man in your wedding. He's been here for 30 years. And I was like, with this margin, we're barely breaking even. If anyone we should be able to deliver unique value to and demand a higher price, it should be this guy. So that, as soon as you said that, I was like, wow, that you're 100% right.
Yeah. And I think, once again, who are we learning from? So I think one of the things, once again, going back to advice for new people in our industry is find a company or an environment where you have mentors or peer coaches that you can learn from. And so I remember kind of going back to my Central Florida lumberyard distribution sales time. When I first started, I saw another sales rep who would print out a price sheet, stacks of price sheets and just go drop price sheets all over the place. And I thought, hey, that doesn't feel right, but maybe I should be doing that too.
Right.
And so the good thing was I had two strong mentors, my sales manager, and then a outside sales rep there who was my peer coach. And that outside sales rep peer coach saw me one day getting ready to walk out the door with a stack of price lists. And he said, hey, what are you doing with those? I said, hey, I'm going to prospect, right? I'm going to go drop price lists off at customer's office. And he grabbed them, threw them in the trash can and said, dude, you're riding with me today. Let me show you how we do this. So at that point, he explained to me the concept of, hey, you got to at least get in and know these people, like take providing value out, like get in and get to know these people either on a personal level or just understand their business before you even need to think about dropping a price quote off. Like that's the wrong way of looking at it. And that was amazing advice that I got early on in my career.
Can you go into that relationship just a little bit more? You said peer coach. I'm curious if I can just kind of dig into that just a little bit. What did that look like? How formal was it? And anything else you can kind of give context to?
Yeah, so I've had two phenomenal peer coaches, and you don't always see that role in organizations. Okay, so one was at Stock BMC, that first job. Another one was when I started Owens Corning.
Okay.
And that is a person who is in your same role, who isn't a mentor, right? But they're your day-to-day, I do your same job too. And typically it's somebody who's really good at that job, who you can go to for those day-to-day questions that you might be afraid to ask somebody else.
Right.
And so that role is critical in an organization, and it's critical for your personal development. So if you're starting somewhere and you don't have one and the company doesn't have one, find one yourself. There's ways to do that, right? You're going to know who the top salesperson is, or another person that emulates the way that you want to be when you progress in your career. Ask for it, right? Yeah. Ask for a peer coach. A peer coach is different than a mentor. A mentor is typically somebody who outranks you, is above you, maybe even a couple of levels above you, that you can go for those monthly higher level type discussions where they're going to help steer you on your career path and in your career. But both of those roles have been very critical to me. And I've had really, really good ones, been lucky enough to have really, really good ones, but I've also seeked out those people and those relationships.
Well, perfect segue. The question I was going to ask you, and I will ask you, Justin, is when you think of mentors, I'll often talk to younger folks and they'll say, well, hey, you know who I would love to have as a mentor? Justin Powell. Big company. He's the guy at the top, getting close to him. That'd be perfect. And I said, do you know him? Nope. Have you ever talked to him? Nope. But I know he's in our company, so I'm going to try to do that. And I will try to give them a little bit more counsel. And obviously, the size of your organization, number one, that probably happens quite a bit. But number two, there's probably better advice and they could be better served by someone more local. What advice might you have for some younger folks? And quite frankly, given what we're going through now, I was on the phone earlier this week with a guy, he's been in the business for 25 years, having personal and professional lives are all crammed together right now. He's really struggling with some personal issues that stemmed from his professional life, struggling with his family and his wife. And I said, hey, who do you have as a mentor? Who can you talk to? He's like, I got nobody. So I don't think this is just about, hey, who are the 20 somethings that need a mentor? I think this is everyone having someone you can talk to. What advice might you have generally about finding someone who might be a good fit?
Yeah. So I've got three bits of advice. One is, if you find a good mentor, they don't stop being your mentor, even if you switch jobs, switch companies. So keep in touch with those people that teach you amazing things throughout your career. I've done that. I still have my mentor and my peer coach from that first role that I keep in touch with. And we'll talk once or twice a year. And even though I've progressed in my career to a higher level than them, I still ask them advice and questions. Yeah. That's number one. Don't lose your mentor. Number two, mentors need to happen organically. Yeah. So a company can match you up with somebody, but the magic might not happen, right? Mm-hmm. It might not be somebody that you just click with. So I think as you get into an organization, the company that you work for, you're going to meet somebody that you click with that is a level or two levels up. That's not your leader. They can't be your day-to-day boss. Right. And ask that person, hey, do you mind 30 minutes a month mentoring me? I really like the way that you approached this situation that we dealt with the marketing team, or I really like that advice you gave me on the customer that I was dealing with. Would you mind that 30 minutes a month? So that's the second bit of advice. The third bit of advice is the most important. This is how you keep a mentor. So this is, everybody out there, write this down. You need to come prepared for your mentoring session, and you need to send that mentor an email with an agenda 24 hours in advance. Because the last thing you want to do is have your mentor have to work to be your mentor. Yeah. And that email looks like this. Hey, Bradley, we got our mentoring session tomorrow. I got three things I want to discuss. I got this one thing that's working really well. All right. I want your thoughts on how to make it work even better. Mm-hmm. I got this one thing that I'm struggling with. And then after hearing those two things, is there anything you think I need to be working on outside of those two things? Yeah. So what's working well? What am I struggling with? And then something that your mentor is going to see after those two conversations that they want to work on with you. And just that outline 24 hours in advance makes your mentor's world so much easier. And then that you're going to be able to maintain that 30 minutes a month and it not be a burden upon them.
No, really well said. And I think that third part, if your goal there is to extract as much wisdom and experience and knowledge from your mentor, don't expect them to come up with genius on the spot. You know why? Because they're busy. They got other stuff going on. So I love that. And I think you're number one, really, I'm thinking about it myself. Like you, I've kind of intentionally, because number one, I like these people. Number two, I always learn from them, have stayed in touch with many of my mentors. However, one immediately comes to mind where I'm like, it's definitely pre-COVID. So I'm going on at least 15, 16 months, but I think those relationships, you have to invest in them. And you're right. Just because you move on or just because you're now, 50 years old or whatever, you'll never know when you want to need those. And those kind of, it's like a bank account. You got to continually kind of make deposits in there. So really well said. I'm glad I threw that at you. Now let's take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Like me, you are probably invested in the stock market in some way. Well, there was a time not too long ago when you had to call someone to learn the share price of, say, Amazon. You'd call up your broker and you'd say, "Hey, Tommy, tell me now, where's Amazon trading these days, huh? That Bezos guy seems pretty smart. He's getting into pharmacies. Bezos, dealing drugs. That's gotta be huge, right? It's gotta be." So Tom thinks it over and he points out that it is indeed a $1 trillion company, but you can still get it on the ground floor. 30 minutes later, he calls you back. "So Bob," that's you, you're Bob. "So Bob, here's the deal. I called in some favors for you. I know a guy who knows a guy who plays pickleball with Bezos' second cousin once removed on his stepmother's side. Anywho, Amazon share price for you, my friend, is $3,224.43. But you gotta act now, Bob. It's on the move. Are you in or out? Man or mouse, huh?" Okay, two things here. Number one, I apologize for the accent or accents. Number two, does anyone still buy stocks this way? Maybe, but it's become so easy to see the price for yourself and so easy to purchase it yourself, you can buy a share of Amazon whenever you want. And as I record this, one share of Amazon is trading at $3,112.94, more than $10 cheaper than what Tom quoted you. Now, I have an E-Trade account. It's super simple, it's fast, and the fees are low. It saves me time and money, and it gives me confidence. So, is E-Trade our new sponsor? No, but I am a satisfied customer. So if you're listening, E-Trade, call me. No, E-Trade is not our newest sponsor, but Materials Exchange is. And Materials Exchange is the E-Trade of the LBM industry. Their interface is dead simple. The price transparency is immediate, and the fees are low. So quit relying on Tom or an index to tell you the price. You can see for yourself at materialsexchange.com. That is the word materials, the letter X, and the word change. Go to Materials Exchange now and register today. There's no fee to register, and you can see the price transparency for yourself. When you do register, and again, it's free, use the promo code BRADLEY, BRADLEY, and you can get your first trade free. So there's zero risk, and you can get real-time pricing transparency. It's just an email away. Materials Exchange is the LBM industry's answer to E-Trade. Materials Exchange is your digital marketplace for lumber and panels.
And then I'm going to give one last lesson learned that covers all three of those experiences we just talked about, right? So we talked about outside sales rep in a lumber yard distribution, more of a technical sale, and then also that area sales manager for a manufacturer with the Owens Corning space. I remember I was in a meeting early on in my career, and having my MBA, I was used to building a strategy. Okay. And so I was in a room and they said, "Hey, who in this room knows how to build a strategy for the Orlando, Central Florida market?" And I sort of went like this. My hand slowly crept up, and I was the only person in the room who had experience building a business plan strategy. So I always started from day one in my sales career with a plan and a strategy, all right, which that's critical. A lot of people just run into sales. They go out and attack the first customer they see, and then they randomly drive around town, right? Chasing after customers. Right. So having the plan and the strategy. And then the one secret to my success in all of those roles. So this has been my secret to success. It still is today. It's a secret for me doing an okay job, hopefully, on this podcast, is pre-call planning, right? Having, and you and I both share that same passion, but pre-call planning, having a structured plan before every sales call so that you, A, don't waste your client or prospect's time, and B, so you get the most out of it from your perspective. That pre-call planning after having a strategy, that's been the secret to my success.
Yeah. We could go down another 2 or 3 hours on this, on just the pre-call plan and getting super tactical, but I couldn't agree more. And I think whenever you see, I wouldn't say it's just not in sales, I think it's any domain. When you see someone, you're like, you just sit back and you're like, dude, this guy's a natural, it looks effortless. 99 times out of 100, the reason it looks effortless is behind the scenes, they're doing the necessary preparation to come in confident. And then if it doesn't go well, at least they're going to know they put in the thought and they'll be able to go back to that and they'll learn from it. But there's no such thing as a natural, and everything.
I agree. And I just got some survey results from a world-renowned, the number one pricing consultant in all industries, but this was specific to our industry. The buyer puts 4 times the amount of time into planning for a sales call than the seller does.
Oh.
So the buyer puts 4 times much planning into trying to get a better price, a better deal, better terms, whatever it might be, than the salesperson trying to actually sell them something. So they're at a 4x disadvantage before they even walk in the door.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Well,
crazy stuff.
I've got stories, but my classic move would be, especially if it was something important. I knew we were buying, we're going to RFQ. You'd come in, I say, Justin, if you would, tell me how you're better, how are you different? So I'd hit that right off the bat. And then depending on how you do, as we'd progress, I'd often say, I would show him a sheet and I would say, hey, you can see here, I got 13 questions. But I said, before we get into that, you're probably wondering why, I called you, but what questions do you have for me? And sometimes these guys with their yellow legal pad, they would literally curl it over, go, and they're like, I'm glad you asked. And I would stop them. I say, are you telling me you haven't written down one question? And depending on when it was in the day, whether I was hungry, if I was being, a jerk, I would often just end that meeting. And I was like, listen, you were coming, I did all this work. This was your opportunity to sell me. I'm buying it. My job's purchaser. I will purchase this stuff. You got to go. And I said, we're going to end this meeting now. And if you want, you can get back on the calendar, but we'll see what happens. But I could run my mouth on this, but I 100% believe that. And I lived it, the preparation on that buyer side. And I think we should assume as sellers, it's 10X, but just how do you get ready for that?
I agree. So as we sort of transition next, we're going to move from when we think of my lessons learned. So we're getting back to that. As I moved from Atlanta to Dallas, there was 2 transitions that I made.
Okay.
I transitioned from a superstar salesperson, right? Which everybody, when you're the superstar salesperson, everybody loves you, right? Like the company loves you. You can do no wrong. Nope. You're always right, which is kind of scary. You're in this room and you're always right. But being at the top of the leaderboard from a sales perspective always helps, right?
It does.
But transitioning from a superstar sales rep to a sales leader, right? Having to lead people, but then also making that family decision of my wife and I, when we had kids now, moving from Atlanta to Dallas. So I'll take the family side of it first, because I think that's a lot of what people struggle with when they're just trying to figure out, hey, how do I advance my career but also manage the family? And so that was not an easy decision for us. So moving from Atlanta to Dallas, we had got a lot of friends, we had family in the Atlanta area, but we made a commitment to each other. So my wife and I made a commitment to each other that, hey, we want to take this leadership sales role, my career, as far as we could do it. So we agreed to that move. I think that's one of the biggest things. Like you have to agree before you make the leap. If you make the leap before you're on the same page, it can cause some serious problems.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best bits of advice that I ever got in my life, so pre-call planning was my number one go-to game changer for my selling career. This bit of advice was a number one bit of advice for family work balance. And it came from Mike Thaman, who was the CEO of Owens Corning. And he told me one time, he said, hey, there's like 4 things that you have the opportunity to be great at in your life right now. And we're not going to bring in religion or politics. So I'm going to take those 2 things out for a second. But his 4 things were family, career, hobbies, and friends. So he said, Justin, you can be excellent at 2 of the 4. you have to pick which 2 of the 4 you want to be excellent at. So take a step back and he's like, do you want to have an amazing career and be really good at golf, like your hobby? Do you want to have an awesome family and a ton of friends? But he's like, you got to pick 2 of those, because if you try to be all things to all 4 of those, you're going to fail. And so that's the point in my life when we made that shift from superstar sales rep to sales leader, Atlanta to Dallas, where I chose family and career to be excellent at. And the other 2 things, I have friends, right? But I'm not an excellent, just like rock star, superstar friend. And my hobbies now have to be what my kids are doing for their hobbies.
Yeah.
So luckily my kids play a little golf now, but like it has to be dad first, not golf first. And so that bit of advice is what I would give to all professionals as they're thinking of making that move. When you make that move, you gotta pick 2 of those 4 to be excellent at. Family's gotta be one of those. Like family always should be one of the 4. And then if it's going to be a career, you got to think about those other 2 spots and how do you make sacrifices?
I think that's really profound. Family, career, hobbies, and friends. And I think this kind of goes back to, and especially for a guy like you, you're moving up in the world, you're talking to the CEO, you're thinking, hey, what's my strategy? What's the how? This is an easy framework for you to say, strategy is about trade-offs. That's what it is. What are you willing to make a trade-off on? And if you try to squeeze in a third, just know it's like anything else. You're not going to be excellent at those other ones, right? You're going to do them all somewhat poor. That's wild. So when with your wife, what did that conversation, and I won't go too deep in it, but just curious, what was that conversation like where you're kind of like, okay, hey, this is the option that we have, but it also sounds like there was that risk too, because I'm sure you see this all the time, all across industries, is that it's really easy to take a superstar salesperson, put him in a management or leadership role, and then say, oh, right, these are 2 different skill set and not everyone can make that leap.
Yeah. So I think, just taking a step back to my first job, right? I was a beach lifeguard for 9 years, which seems like a pretty cake job, but it really isn't. I mean, we did some serious rescues and it was a serious role. So in my advancing in that role, and in my team captain of different sports that I played, being a leader was always something that I had to do. Like it was what I wanted to do. So I wanted to be leaderboard on the superstar sales rep ranking, whatever the KPI was, I was going after it. But then when I made the choice to switch to sales leader or just leader of people, really, truly the servant leadership approach. So I kind of stick between 2. So my 2 go-to leadership profiles are inspirational leader. Okay. So I try to be an inspirational leader no more than 20% of the time. Okay. Because people think, hey, like if you're inspirational leader 99% of the time, they're like, what's wrong with this person? Like it's too much, right? So I try to be about 20% inspirational, 80% servant, just being there for people. And I think that was a transition that was easy for me once I had the right coaches and mentors pointing that out to me.
Okay.
And so going back to, my leader was strong. I had an HR partner who was super strong, and they were communicating feedback to me that, hey, that was superstar sales rep Justin that just popped in the room. We actually need that servant leader guy who was here yesterday. Yeah. Can he come back? Like that's the person you need to be. That's the best you now, we need the best you now, not the best you then. Yeah. And kind of going along with that, in sales, we like to move at a fast pace, right? Like, we are, especially if you're an A player, superstar sales rep, you got to lead at a fast pace. But part of the battle of being a really good leader is getting the most out of B players, right? Like getting a C player to a B or a B to an A, or just getting the most out of the Bs. And so another good advice I got from my leader at the time was, hey man, like you at 80% speed is faster than 99% of the people in the world, right? So like, don't be afraid to tone it down to 80%. Because then that's going to help you connect better with the B players on your team that you got to inspire, motivate, and get the most out of. So hopefully that roundabout answers your question of is how do you go from superstar to leader, and maybe what are some of the challenges that you had as you did it?
Yeah, well, I think number one, having that personal awareness of, hey, that was superstar Justin. We got to dial it back over here, but also having those relationships where people can be really candid with you. And know that you will understand and embrace that. And oftentimes I heard a good line that said, feedback is just like a gift. Sometimes we struggle with how to open it though. And I'm like, dude, that's really powerful. And I think for you, it's like having that reflected back in real time, right? Seem like someone who's very driven and competitive. Okay, boom. Now I'm going to flip that switch to go this direction.
I agree. And you don't get that a lot when you're at the top of the leaderboard as a sales rep, right? They tell sales leaders to leave those people alone, which is a mistake. You still have to coach those people because if they ever want to do something other than that, they're going to need that. So yeah, the first few times I got that feedback from my leader, it hurt. I was like, wait a minute. I was like superstar sales rep, had all the trophies on the trophy case, like nothing could go wrong. And now I'm getting feedback, but he kept giving it. My HR partner at the time, she kept giving it. And then after a while, I was like, hey, this is just like my swim coach or my high school basketball coach. I know what this feels like. Those people were yelling and you're not. So this actually feels better than that. Yeah. And so yeah, getting that feedback is a gift. Receiving it productively is the gift you give back to that person. And that's the hard part for superstar sales reps transitioning to sales leader.
Yeah. Kind of that mindfulness about your own ego and how do I take the emotion out of it? How do I understand it? Well, cool. Hey, I'm watching the time too. So let's, if you tell me, I think we're on the career path here where we kind of make that jump to Beacon. Walk me through that. What are some of the insights there that you can share that are not part of the secret special sauce either?
Yeah. So I think one last thing that I'll sort of transition before that. So I ran national sales for national accounts at Owens Corning, and then I transitioned to a really cool role there running sales operations for them. So I think that role was critical to where I am today as well. So I think it's one thing to think about. There's a whole side of sales that most people don't see. And operations, which is the processes, the technology we use in sales to sell better, faster, stronger, have better, faster data. That role opened up my eyes to many of those things. The stuff behind the CRM, that it's really important to have that amazing information in the CRM so that the business can make good decisions. But then also on that sales enablement side, providing the right training, the right playbooks, the right scripts, everything you need for a salesperson to have at the tip of their finger so that they can meet the need of the customer better. That sales operations role, where I moved from Dallas to Ohio with Owens Corning, really helped me fill in that back of the house type sales perspective and sales leadership perspective that I needed. It also got me in some really high level strategy discussions that once again helped build that strategy muscle that a lot of sales reps don't have when they make that progression. Yeah. And so that role was critical to where I am today and what I'm doing now.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion there. But when you talk about the training, the scripts and the tools, putting that hat on and saying, all right, I understand what that point of sale looks like and the challenges. How do we back it up and provide all those things up front and really do all the things that the BMCs did and the context, like the companies that gave you that great training? Takes a ton of time, energy, and attention. And too often you only know that when it's absent. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
And then I would just say, transitioning to the current environment, my current role, it's just putting it all together, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the lessons learned along the way. And it's so much fun to put it all together and watch it work and watch, amazing things happen because of all the lessons we've had, all the lessons that I personally had and folks on my team have had in the past. So I think putting it all together. And then I think, just some big trends that I think, not Beacon specific, but just in our industry that we all need to think about. Technology. Technology right now is king, just like we're doing right now. If you don't have the right technology to support your business, it's really going to be hard for you to be successful. So something as little as having the right selling experience for video selling, virtual selling, also having the right CRM, those types of things, that's critically important. And then lastly, I think that the big thing out there now is our sales reps in our industry are super pumped to get back out in front of the customers. But every survey you read, the buyers were actually happy with the virtual selling experience. And so we got to make sure we're meeting our customers where they want to be met, not just wanting to get out of the house and blow off some steam because this pandemic has been tough for all of us. So I think that's the big high level thing for us right now. Let's all continue to be safe. Let's all continue to think about the muscles we built over the last 15 months in the environment that we've been in. And that's really, really important because our buyers have been happy with the way that we've been servicing them.
Yeah. Yeah. We had Matthew Schmidt on, who was actually one of my mentors, my boss when I was at Pulte in purchasing as a national buyer there. And he was saying they're taking 15 months ago, they're essentially taking 0 of those calls through video. Now they're taking upwards of 60 to 70. And I asked, all right, fast forward another 6 months, what percentage of those do you think you would prefer to take virtually? And he's like, probably about 60 to 70% of them. So like, just totally reinforces what you're saying and saves so much time and energy. And at the end of the day, I think it goes back to a theme that you've brought out is it's not about what you like to do or you're great at. It's how can I be a servant? How can I think about what the other side wants? And whatever they want me to do, if they want me to sell with crayons and bar napkins, I'm all for it. I'll figure it out if that's what you want, right? But it's not about us and what we prefer to do or what we used to do all the time.
Yeah, there's a really amazing McKinsey survey out there right now. 80% of B2B buyers in America prefer the virtual selling experience. So that means only 20% want you to come back to their office, and none of those people want you to come back without an appointment, right? So to make sure we're doing things the right way. Well, I guess my last thing I'll say is the building material industry has been amazing to me. I was really excited when you asked me to join you so that I could give my experience and give back.
Yeah.
But for anybody thinking of what's their first job going to be, this industry is the place to be. And anybody that's in any other industry and not happy, look at all the websites of companies like Beacon. A lot of amazing jobs out there for you, and we would love to have you, and we'd love to train you and teach you our industry.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I will say thank you, because you can tell it always makes my job easy when you can tell people have thought through the questions we sent, have specific insights. And quite frankly, I'm just sitting back, kind of making notes for myself here. We love all our guests. Sometimes that's not how it happens. They come on and we just kind of, they hope it comes to them in the moment. And it's obvious you prepared for this and are practicing what you're preaching, which made my job easier. And I think this is a hell of an episode. So Justin, I think this is a great place to end. Thank you.
Hey, happy to be here. And once again, that's just a little pre-call planning, right? That's what we do.
That's it. You got it. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Bradley. I've really enjoyed it. I'm always here to help you whenever you need it.
Thanks, man. All right. How did that go? I didn't oversell it, did I? I don't think I can. I don't think I could oversell this. I've listened to this multiple times myself throughout the editing process. And every time I'm scribbling down just another little note or anecdote or insight that is very relevant to me or someone else in my network. As always, I hope it was worth your time and attention. Now, our goal is to make this the best podcast you listen to. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas for future shows and potential guests, and any specific sales issues that you might be struggling with. Whether you're a sales individual contributor and it's something a customer or a prospect or a boss you're struggling with, or maybe you're sales leadership and it's something that a client, prospect, or builder, or a sales rep that you're struggling with, we are here to help both on the air and off. Feel free to share your recommendations or suggestions or challenges with me directly at Bradley at BehindYourBackSales.com. Again, Bradley at BehindYourBackSales.com. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your network and leave a review. Those mean more to us than you can know. I want to thank our sponsors once again. You can learn more about Boise Cascade's engineered wood products and their innovative SawTech technology by visiting bc.com/EWP. And what E-Trade is for the stock market, Materials Exchange is to the LBM industry. They make commodity pricing transparent, buying simple, and the fees are low. That is Materials Exchange. So as always, my friends, thank you for listening. I know you have other places where you could put your time and attention. I appreciate you sharing it with us. I hope you found it valuable. We're going to close out like we always do. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first.